Hello, in this video I am going to show you how to implement form controls. So just a basic form example in Bootstrap 5. So a form is, like a submission form or a login form, for example. And here is what we're essentially going to be implementing. I'll be showing you most of it, but there's a bit more on the Bootstrap API guide. Plus this can get updated later on. So I recommend that you check this out. There will be a link to this in the description. So let's get to it. So it's very conventional that you put a form tag, and in there you put your form. The form tags would also have like a method and action as well, but because we're not really dealing with back-end technologies, just the front end in terms of the way it looks, we don't need that. So first of all, we're gonna have a div, and this is going to have a class of mb-3. So this is just adding a margin at the bottom just so it's easy to look at. Otherwise, all of the form controls are on top of each other. Doesn't look very good. So this is going to be for entering an email address, for example, and we're going to put a label first, label, and this is going to say for email address input, which will be the ID of the input that we'll be implementing shortly. This is going to have a class of form-label and not Laval, label. And now we're just going to say email address so the user knows what they need to insert here. And we're going to put an input tag now. This is where the user would actually be inputting something. And this is going to have a type of email. This is going to have a class of form control, and it's going to have an ID, which is exactly what we put here. And now I'm going to have a placeholder. It's going to say name at example.com. So the benefit of this is it shows the user what format essentially the content should be in. Obviously, yeah, we all know what an email address format is, but just in case, and it's just a good thing to have. Now let's actually implement the next control, which is very similar. We'll have a label, and this is going to be a description input. So this is, let's say if you was on a website's contact page and you had to put your email address in and maybe the description of your inquiry. Okay, so this is store form label. I'm gonna put description here instead. And for the input, it's slightly different. We're gonna use a text area, which just allows you to put multi, line text. And in HTML, that actually has its own component, its own element, which is text area. And we're not gonna put anything in between. So we want it to be empty. I'm gonna put a class of form control ID will match this right here, and we're going to put rows equals 3. So this way it has a size of 3 rows. You can expand it in the actual website. So this is what we get. As you can see, it is nicely responsive, so this will work great on a mobile device. And it says name at example, but if I click on it and I'll start typing, let's say bob@gmail.com, for example, that gets rid of that placeholder, and we can start typing. We're not restricted to 3 rows. It's just the size was 3 rows. Anything more than that, you gets clipped, but you can extend it like so. So that is a basic example. Now let me show you how to deal with sizing inside of this. So I'm going to duplicate this, and honestly what I'm going to do is get rid of this and I get rid of the label, just because this isn't enough to do a basic example anymore. It's just about sizing. And I get rid of the ID as well. You would usually have an ID, but we don't need it for essentially what we're trying to demonstrate here. And ooh, that messed up a bit. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna put some there. I'm also gonna put a break rule just because if I don't, they're literally on top of each other. Doesn't look very nice. But again, that's just formatting. You could put an MB, -3 on, this class as well. So if we want the form control to be large, you just put an extra class of form-control-lg. If you want it to be medium, you just leave it. You don't actually add any extra class. That's what it is by default. And if you want it to be small, perform-control-sn. So if we reload, that's what we get. So this is what we have by default, but if you want it smaller or larger, you can easily do that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you is how to make a form control read only. So let me duplicate this. And in here, I will get rid of virtually all of it. Don't really need the sizing, but you can leave it there. So if I wanted to make this read only, it's really simple. All you do is put the read only tag attribute like that. Reload, this is read only, and I cannot type in it. So why would you want a read only form control? Maybe the user can't input into that form control until they have triggered some other condition, and when that gets triggered, obviously you will be doing those checks in JavaScript. Then this becomes non-read only, and you would do again all of that in JavaScript. So that's it. I want you to do it that as a example that maybe a previous form control needs to be filled in X amount of characters. Do that in JavaScript, the checks, and once that is, this goes to not read only anymore, and you can put stuff in there, and vice versa. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop me a message, and as usual, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.